Here now is business and constitution attorney Seth Berenzweig. Thank you for being here. Let's start with the First Amendment question. How will those legal arguments look before the High Court on Friday?
Well, this is really a historic moment from both a business and constitutional perspective. It's the first time that big data has been required to divest, and it is a direct conflict and really just a direct collision between freedom of speech and national security. In this instance, the court's going to resolve this under the analysis to determine whether or not the law is narrowly related to a compelling governmental interest. And the reason why I believe that the court will rule against TikTok is because there has been remarkable unanimity, not only here in Washington underneath the act as it was created by Congress and applied by the administration, but by the D.C. Federal Appellate Court. It was a unanimous decision, and I believe that it was very compelling that the CCP is a bad actor. On the process, TikTok has a problem because at the end of the day, we have a malign foreign actor that doesn't even necessarily enjoy constitutional protections because the powers of the United States Constitution end at our borders. But even if it does apply, it will be determined that there is a compelling state interest. It is really a toxic two-way street. You have data collection and monitoring going into the users, and then you also have in the other direction content moderation that is very much against the national security interests of the United States. So it'll be a very interesting and historic argument, but this is a real uphill climb for TikTok in this case.
So you think the court rules against TikTok, so the ban would then move forward, but then you've got this wrinkle of a potential buyer. How might that impact the legality?
Well, it's really interesting. This is a curveball led by incoming President Donald Trump. He's asking for a delay in order to be able to work a deal. Kevin O'Leary and some folks associated with him are saying we can come in and save the day. It is possible that the Supreme Court can tag along a 30 or 60-day stay in terms of the imposition of the ruling, and that could give a little bit of time. So there could be a wrinkle in that regard, and it would be very interesting. But keep in mind that that's really just a short stay of execution. Really, the clock is tick-tocking, if you will, here, because regardless, it's not going to change the long-term results. And then the question ultimately becomes, do you have willing parties on both sides of the deal? Because the CCP has to be willing to play ball as well. So it is a very interesting wrinkle. It could have a short-term implication, but in the long term, TikTok is still a loser, as this case is probably going to unfurl.
But when you look at ByteDance's options, I mean, a foreign buyer, is that their only legal option to keep TikTok alive? I mean, is there anything else they could do to prevent the ban?
Well, in the United States, really the only thing that they can do to keep it alive here is to have a financial transaction that would be mutually beneficial. This is really the last stop. The Supreme Court is really the court of last resort. There is nowhere else to go other than providing a very short period of time on a stay of execution, if you will, in deference to Donald Trump to allow some kind of a deal. But that's really the last stop on the trail. I think at this point, we really are seeing the last days of TikTok as we know it here in the United States. And really at that point, this is a ruling that will probably come out by the deadline, which is the 19th of the month.
I'm thinking in my head just of a couple scenarios. So say on Friday they rule pretty quickly and they let the ban move forward. But then later you have some deal worked out between ByteDance and O'Leary or someone else. Can any of this be repealed? How would that work?
Well, you really raise an interesting point because although that would not mean that it would be repealed, there is nothing preventing the parties from continuing to negotiate a deal after January 20th. So let's play that out. Let's say that the Supreme Court, which it ultimately probably will, rules against TikTok. And now it really has a problem on its hands, and it's going to gradually disappear and degrade, and it's not going to be carried anymore in the United States. That doesn't prevent Donald Trump Kevin O'Leary and anybody else from coming in and negotiating a deal. And in fact, you could argue that it even provides more leverage for closing a deal with China. So that is very much a possibility. I think that that is something that could occur. Again, it's not going to change the big picture and the overall situation of the case. But ultimately, there is still going to be a chance that there could be a deal closing over the next couple of weeks, regardless of the final ruling by the Supreme Court in this case.
Interesting. Okay, Seth, thank you for breaking down the legal side of this. Appreciate it.